Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for a really strategic and maybe a bit unsettling journey into the history of ambition.
We are. Our source is Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power, which is, a very provocative and widely studied book.
Absolutely, and it's less of a moral guide and more of a psychological field manual, right?
That's a good way to put it. It pulls from centuries of tactical behavior. You've got Machiavelli, Roman emperors, and even military guys like Napoleon and Mao Zedong.
Right. So our mission here is purely analytical. We're not endorsing these tactics. We're just unpacking the mechanisms to understand the raw dynamics that can govern human relationships, especially in these really high-stakes environments.
Whether it's politics, business, or, the battlefield.
Exactly. So think of this deep dive as a shortcut to identifying those strategic currents that flow just beneath the surface. We're going to look at how people weaponize appearance, manage dependency, and commit to, well, ruthless long-term plans.
And you really have to approach this material impartially. They're observations on human nature and strategy, not a prescription for how to live.
But if you want to recognize the moves being made against you, you have to be able to spot the maneuver, the whole iron hand inside a velvet glove thing that Napoleon talked about.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's start with the foundation of it all, which is the management of perception. Because if you can control what people think you are, you've already won half the battle.
And this begins with a really counterintuitive law. It's Law 21. Play a sucker to catch a sucker seem dumber than your mark.
I love this one because it just leverages pure human vanity. The most comfortable feeling for anyone is feeling like they're the smartest person in the room.
Right, and if you deliberately seem less informed or, less shrewd, you lower their guard.
They stop looking for the trap. They just assume you're not smart enough to set one.
That perceived simplicity just, it neutralizes their scrutiny. We see this play out perfectly in the Great Diamond Hoax of the 1870s.
Oh, with Arnold's and Slack, yeah.
Yes. They fooled the most sophisticated financiers and experts in the country. Even Louis Janin, who was supposedly the best mining expert of his day.
The whole scam was just stunningly audacious. But when Janin and the financiers actually met these two prospectors, Arnold and Slack just played the part of, total hayseeds.
They acted completely naive about money, about city life. The experts immediately wrote them off as simple rubes.
And that was the hook, wasn't it?
That was the entire hook. The experts were so sure of their own brilliance and so convinced of the prospectors' stupidity that they couldn't imagine a complex deception.
They were looking for a fox and got fooled by someone wearing a sheep costume.
Their own vanity just blinded them. They accepted the story on the surface and overlooked all the obvious flaws.
It really shows that being brilliant isn't enough. You have to deploy it strategically. And sometimes that means hiding it. Which brings us to another big one. Law 1. Never outshine the master.
Oh, this is timeless. It's rooted in pure insecurity. People in power are always worried about being replaced.
So if you come in and you're too talented, too flashy, you just breed fear in your boss. They start to see you as a threat, not a resource.
Exactly. So the move isn't to do bad work. The move is to make sure the glory reflects back onto the master. You have to make them feel more brilliant for having hired you.
Galileo is the perfect example here, right? In his struggle for patronage.
A perfect pivot. Yeah. He spent years begging for support, showing off his new gadgets and discoveries, but he was just ignored.
Why?
Because he was making his wealthy patrons feel like simple check writers, just funders for a mechanic.
So what did he change?
He completely flipped his strategy with the Medici family. Instead of just showing his inventions, he started linking their name to cosmic phenomena. He named the moons of Jupiter the Medicean stars.
That is so much more profound. He wasn't asking them to fund science.
No.
He was making them the center of the universe.
He was. He gave them a piece of immortality. He attached their name to the cosmos. That's infinitely more valuable than being the patron of some new scientific gadget. And by doing that, he secured his position.
But the book offers a really important reversal here. It says you don't always have to defer.
That's right. If the master is a falling star, someone weak or on our way out, the rules change.
Then you can outshine them.
In that case, you have nothing to fear. Displaying greater competence can even discreetly speed up their downfall. But the real lesson is foresight. You have to be sure they're actually falling.
If you move too soon, you just become a martyr for your own ambition.
The calculus of power demands patience.
Patience is definitely a theme here. Which brings us to our next segment. We're moving from what people see to what they know. Deception and dependency, starting with Law 3. Conceal your intentions.
This is Strategy 101. If people don't know the real purpose behind your actions, they can't prepare a defense.
So you create a fog, you use, what did Green call them, decoyed objects of desire and red herrings.
Exactly. You throw them completely off the scent of your actual long-term goal.
And nobody mastered this kind of ambiguity like Bismarck, did they, during his push for German unification?
Oh, he was a master. At the absolute height of war fever, when he was secretly planning these aggressive moves to unify Germany by force, he stunned everyone by giving this incredibly passionate peace speech in Parliament.
He praised Austria, his rival.
Praised Austria, questioned the cost of war. He said, "Woe unto the statesman who makes war without a reason that will still be valid when the war is over."
So he sounded like this responsible diplomat, which was the exact opposite of his real agenda.
Precisely. The signals were so misleading that his opponents got caught up in the noise of the speech. They couldn't possibly anticipate his real military goals.
He had them arguing about the cost of war while he was building the army to win it.
Total confusion, and that neutralized the opposition.
And that kind of concealment, it often means you have to keep people at a distance, because the ones closest to you are the most likely to see the pattern. This connects right to law, too. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies.
That one's brutal.
It is a brutal assessment of loyalty, isn't it?
It is. But it's based on this observation that friends often betray you out of envy or a sense of entitlement, especially if you elevate them. The bond of friendship is just too sentimental, too easily spoiled.
But I have to push back a little here. Isn't there an even bigger risk in hiring a former enemy? Aren't you just trading a friend's potential entitlement for an enemy's definite resentment?
You'd think so. But the argument is that a former enemy you hire has everything to prove. They're often more loyal because they know their position is conditional. They're grateful for the second chance.
Unlike a friend who feels like they earned it just by being your friend.
Exactly. The tragedy of Michael III, the Byzantine emperor, shows this perfectly. He trusted his best friend, Basilius, a guy from the royal stables.
Zero political experience.
None. But Michael made him his chief counselor. He staked everything on Basilius's gratitude.
And that backfired.
Massively. The sources say that as Basilius gained power, he felt encumbered by the charity he had received. The gratitude became a burden, so Basilius eventually murdered Michael after a night of drinking and took the throne for himself.
So trusting affection over a more pragmatic calculation was literally fatal for him.
It was. And if these emotions like ambition are infectious, then we have to look at Law 10, infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky.
This one sounds so callous on the surface.
It does. The law basically says that misery and misfortune are contagious. If you associate with people who are constantly unlucky or unhappy, you can bring disaster on yourself.
Not through any direct action, but just by association, through the transfer of attitude and drama.
That's the idea. Constant drama drains your resources, your time, your focus. The law suggests that unlucky people often have a pattern of making poor, self-destructive choices.
And if you get too close to that pattern, you get caught in the consequences. You think you're helping, but you're just signing up to go down with the ship.
You are. Look at the case of Lola Montez and King Ludwig of Bavaria. Lola was known for being incredibly unhappy and unstable.
The stories are wild. Lashing an old man with her riding crop, having her dog attack people.
And her personal instability quickly became political instability. King Ludwig stood by her, out of loyalty, I guess, but her behavior infuriated the people of Bavaria. He became infected by her misfortune.
Her problems became his government's problems.
And the public pressure just grew and grew until his refusal to get rid of her finally forced him to abdicate in the Revolution of 1848.
He lost his throne for empathy. That's a powerful lesson in setting some very strict boundaries.
It is. The second her problems became his image, his rule was on a countdown.
Okay, let's pivot to our final strategic area. The calculus of credit, risk, and achieving that final lasting victory. This kicks off with Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit.
This is all about manufacturing the appearance of godlike strength.
Yeah.
The world sees the brilliant final product with your name on it. They don't see all the labor that went into it.
Avoid becoming the overlooked cog in the machine. And the most tragic modern example of this has to be Nikola Tesla working for Thomas Edison.
It's a profound corporate tragedy. Tesla worked, 18 hours a day to completely redesign Edison's primitive dynamos. He was promised a $50,000 bonus, which was a fortune then.
And when he delivered this vastly superior design,
Yeah.
Edison just laughed.
Laughed in his face. He said, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." He refused to pay.
Unbelievable.
Edison took all the credit for the improvements, solidified his own narrative as the sole genius, and Tesla was forced out, financially ruined. Edison knew that the appearance of genius was more valuable than the actual work.
Which sets up our next principle, which is about maintaining independence. Law 40. Despise the free lunch.
This law is all about the price of dependency. Anything offered for free has a hidden obligation, a psychological string attached.
So by paying your own way, you stay clear of gratitude, guilt, and deceit.
You protect your freedom to maneuver, so generosity has to be used strategically, as a sign of power, not subservience.
The writer, Pietro Aretino, was apparently a master of this. He needed patrons, but he hated the usual model, which was basically begging.
He refused to be subservient, so instead he chose to be the generous one. He sent these lavish gift sculptures, paintings from his artist friends like Titian to the powerful Marquis of Mantua.
So he made the Marquis indebted to him.
Exactly. He created a relationship of equality or even superiority. He used his generosity to buy the Marquis's political support without ever having to ask for money. It was brilliant.
It really was. Okay, so to pull any of these strategies off, you need the long game, which is our next one, Law 29, planned all the way to the end.
The ending is everything. It's the only thing people remember. If you don't account for all the variables, political, personal, someone else can just swoop in and steal your glory.
Most people just focus on the immediate win.
They do. And a great cautionary tale here is Vasco Núñez de Balboa, the first European to see the Pacific Ocean from the New World. An incredible achievement.
He gets there, gets gold from the locals, hears about the Inca Empire. He's on the verge of everything.
He completed the physical quest, but he failed the political one. Instead of consolidating his power right there, he went back to Darien to get a bigger army, which he needed, but it left him politically exposed.
He planned the journey, but not the return.
And his rival, the governor Pedrarius, was jealous of his fame. He used Balboa's absence to lure him back and, well, eventually execute him, stealing the glory and the potential discovery of the Incas.
His brilliance in the field was just useless without political foresight.
And to counteract that kind of fatal rigidity, we have to finish with our last law, Law 48. Assume formlessness.
So if you have a fixed shape, a visible plan, you're just a target. The best defense is to be fluid, adaptable like water.
History gives us a really powerful contrast on this point. You have Sparta. They created this rigid military society for stability, and it worked for centuries. But that rigidity made them fragile and predictable over the long term.
They couldn't adapt.
Couldn't adapt to new politics, new types of warfare. Now, contrast that with Mao Zedong's guerrilla warfare. It was abstract, constantly moving, and it broke the much larger nationalist army.
Because Chiang Kai-shek's army was trained in a Western style. They were looking for a fixed battlefield, a clear enemy, a form that just wasn't there.
Exactly. What cannot be grasped cannot be consumed. Mao's forces were constantly moving, scattering. They avoided set battles and just slowly broke down the predictable strategy of the nationalists. It's about being an enemy that has no fixed identity.
So to wrap this up, we've looked at three huge strategic arenas: managing perception and vanity, leveraging deception while navigating dependency, and finally committing to a fluid long-term plan. These laws give you an incredible insight into the psychology of competition.
And understanding these dynamics is, I think, the most crucial step towards self-defense. You may not want to use these tactics, but you absolutely have to recognize them when they're being used against you. You have to see the iron hand inside that velvet glove.
The source material quotes the Indian philosopher Kautilya, who was famously pragmatic. He said, "Those who seek to achieve things should show no mercy." Which brings up a final thought for you to consider. If the relentless pursuit of being untouchable requires you to minimize emotional connection and ignore vulnerability, what's the ultimate cost, personally and socially, of mastering that art of merciless detachment? It's a question worth thinking about, long after the immediate battle is won.